1868. U.S. Marines battle street by street with communist insurgents during the struggle for the historic city of Wei. Stalingrad, 1942. German troops fight close up with Soviet defenders of the city their leader Joseph Stalin renamed after himself. Urban warfare is the most vicious form of fighting. In an era dominated by technology, it takes a soldier back to the most primitive type of warfare. Hand to hand, knife against knife, street by street, house by house, even down to room by room. It gives and expects no quarter. The battle plan is urban warfare. United States troops practice urban warfare in the American Army's specially built facility at Fort Hood in Texas. Teamwork is vital. Every man depends on every other man to get it right. British troops run their urban warfare drills at the British Army's special facility on Salisbury Plain. Get it wrong, and the consequences can be deadly. Because this is what it's like for real. Fallujah, Iraq, November 2004. In the aftermath of the war against Saddam Hussein.
Urban warfare is one of the most difficult operations that the military are involved in. The Americans call urban warfare FIBUA, fighting in a built-up area. The British squaddies, however, call it fish, fighting in someone's house. They recognise that they will be fighting often from room to room in a very dangerous environment. They are fish out of water, and they recognise the danger in that.
For the commanders and planners who sent the Marines into Fallujah, 2 urban warfare battles will have had a major influence on their thinking and their planning. The Battle of Stalingrad during World War II, and the Communists' Tet Offensive in the war in Vietnam. The Eastern Front in the summer of 1942, the 3rd year of the Second World War. Hitler's forces occupy Western Europe. The previous year, Hitler had turned his attention east and launched Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union. Now Hitler decides the key city of Stalingrad will be shelled and bombed to prevent a buildup of Soviet forces there. 26 years later, another military commander launched another lethal urban war. Vietnam, 1968. 6 years since America became involved militarily. After initial communist successes, U.S. and South Vietnamese government troops have battered the North Vietnamese Army and the South Vietnamese Viet Cong forces in conventional combat. Overwhelming American firepower, especially from the air, is beginning to achieve results. The only hope North Vietnamese General Vo Nguyen Giap has is to win a political rather than a military victory. Up to now, his campaign has been in the countryside. Now he will take it to the major towns and cities of South Vietnam. Giap, veteran of conflict in Indochina since the mid-1940s, plans his assault for Tet, the Vietnamese New Year, beginning January 31st. Tet and Stalingrad, 2 key battles a quarter-century apart. But if they are to win, even to avoid disaster and defeat, German General von Paulus in 1942 and North Vietnamese General Giap in 1968 must both follow the basic requirements in the battle plan for urban warfare. Objective: the planners must be clear why they are committing their troops to this very risky and dangerous battle plan. Speed and surprise. The initial assault must be fast and unexpected to prevent the defenders from preparing and building up their forces. Momentum. The troops must maintain the impetus and momentum of their attack and not allow the defenders to regroup or slow them down. Resupply. While the attacking force is trying to cut off the defenders, it must also ensure its own resupply of food, supplies, and ammunition. Security. Commanders must watch for any enemy counterattack, especially from behind or on the flanks. Exit strategy. Commanders must plan for when and how they will withdraw if they have to. On the Eastern Front in 1942, it is German General Friedrich von Paulus who must meet these requirements. But the plan he must follow is not his own, but Hitler's. In his original campaign to take the Caucasus, Hitler had not considered the Soviet city of Stalingrad to be important, but the summer of 1942 had gone well for him. So now, to prevent a buildup of Soviet forces, Hitler decides to take the city. Stalingrad, with its population of 500,000 people, is a key rail and transport center on the west bank of the Volga River. Stalingrad, however, is not an easy target. It straggles along 20 miles of the precipitous west banks of the Volga. In the north stand the grim concrete industrial sites of the tractor factory, now turning out a quarter of the Red Army's tanks and other vehicles, the Barricades arms plant, the Red October steelworks, and the laser chemical plant. All these provide excellent opportunities for defenders to dig in or to turn them into formidable defensive fortresses. Further south lies the city center, squat stores, government buildings, and 2 railway stations. All of which make up a lethal labyrinth in which attackers might get pinned down. But there is another key factor. The Zarita River runs through the city in a 200-foot deep gorge to the Volga River. There are no bridges across the Volga. Supplies and people have to be ferried across, which should be a major disadvantage for the defenders. But this also means that unless von Paulus's men can cross the Volga, they will run the gauntlet from Soviet guns on the eastern bank. At dawn on August 23, 1942, the Germans are poised to attack. The tanks of the 16th Panzer Division are waiting just 35 miles to the east of the city. Luftwaffe bombers and Stuka dive bombers are ready to pound the city to destruction. Now Hitler's forces must undertake the most lethal type of fighting and find out whether their commanders have met the essential requirements in the battle plan for urban warfare. August 1942. Adolf Hitler's bombers take off for what the Führer intends to be a lethal strike against the strategic city of Stalingrad. January 1968. North Vietnamese Army soldiers and South Vietnamese Viet Cong guerrillas prepare to strike at the heart of Saigon and other key cities of South Vietnam. General Giap has been fighting for 2 decades against the French when Indochina was part of colonial France, against the South Vietnamese government after France's withdrawal, and since 1962, against the Americans. Until 1967, Giap's battlefield strategy has been based around small to medium-sized strikes against selected targets and daily small-scale actions to harass his American and South Vietnamese enemies. But in the mid-1960s, under General William Westmoreland, aggressive American tactics, including extremely heavy air bombardment, have changed the balance. In the spring of 1967, Westmoreland turns up the pressure. The North Vietnamese are losing the war on the military front, so a new focus must be made to gain ground on the political front. General Giap decides to change his tactics totally and use his forces to attack urban rather than their usual rural targets. He will infiltrate his forces into the South Vietnamese capital Saigon and 36 provincial capitals, towns, and cities. They will attack on Tet, the Vietnamese New Year. Targets include the ancient city of Hue and the American embassy itself in Saigon. But in planning their attacks, German General von Paulus and Communist General Giap must address the first crucial requirement in the battle plan for urban warfare. Objective. The planners must be absolutely clear why they are getting locked into this particularly risky type of operation and how the target fits into the overall battle plan.
If we look back at the successful uses of urban warfare in the 20th century, we find that it's most often part of a much larger battle plan. It's therefore important that a commander who is considering